Welcome back, everyone. It is Leah Guy with the Modern Sage Podcast. As always, I'm super happy that you're here. It's a beautiful day in New Jersey. I don't know where you are, but it's so nice to see the sun. And I hope that wherever that you are enjoying a sense of centeredness, peace, calm, oneness, and joy. So today we have a very special guest and a special topic, as always. Before I introduce him, let me just remind you of a couple of things. Please like and review these podcasts. It's helpful across the board with our algorithm and also helpful to introduce this show to new people. You can find the promos, the excerpts, and information about my courses, workshops, one-on-one sessions on my website, leahguy.com, or on social media at leahguylive. Now, many of you that have been following me for a while, you have experienced yourself the discomfort that comes with awakening, with evolving, with shifting, with the dissonance between what others are calling reality sometimes and what we see in our own lives, in our minds, and our hearts. And we know that spirituality, healing, it's messy, it's chaotic, it's often not comfortable. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Phill Webster. Phill is a speaker and an author and a healing artist. And he comes to us from the UK with his new book, Letting Glow. And Phill is exploring in his book, what a beautiful exploration of grief, of awakening, of questioning, curiosity of one's soul and spirit. So Phill, welcome. And I'm so happy that you're here.
It's an honor to be here.
Yes, thank you. So we were just chit-chatting before the show started, and I read your book. I found it very interesting personal account. Your book, Letting Glow, is now out and it's doing very well on Amazon, yes?
Yeah, it's been out from May the 1st, and yeah, it did quite well. That was a new thing for me, the whole book sale thing. That wasn't kind of why I wrote it, but yeah, thankfully it was in the top 10 for a good month or something like that with the new releases. So I trust that the messages in it will get to people.
Yeah. What was your impetus to write? This was your first writing project. This is your first kind of entry into the world of healing and putting the word out there about your personal journey.
How long have we got?
Make it short, Phill.
Yeah, the initial catalyst to write the book was my mother's passing, which was at the tail end of the pandemic. So I hadn't seen her for a few months. So she lived in a different part of the UK to me. She lived on a place called the Isle of Wight, which is like a very small village, kind of rural place, whereas I'm based in London. So when restrictions were lifted, I would go and see her, and I was, trying to stick to the rules and all that stuff. And we would FaceTime every day. And one of the very last call I had with her, and we spoke a couple of times that day, she answered the FaceTime call, and this was in the thick of a lockdown, I have to point out. So nobody was seeing anyone. And I kind of knew everybody that was in her circle. And there weren't that many people. It's a very small and quiet place. When she answered the call, there was a guy standing next to her. And like I saw him long enough that I could describe him. He had thinning gray hair, glasses, and probably looked late 60s, something like that, I would say. And I was kind of shocked. So I was like, hey, who the hell is this guy? And as she picked the phone up, he went out of shot. So I was like, well, who's that? And she was, who's what? So I was like, okay, the guy, I just saw the guy there. Who was it? I was assuming it was maybe somebody to come and help her with the meds. Doctors that, they would come by every now and again. But it was quite late at night. And she had no idea what I was talking about. She just completely sort of sidestepped the question, and we started chatting, and I kept interrupting her. And I said, look, I'm sorry, Mum, but I just saw someone, and I didn't want to freak her out and sort of labor on about it. But anyway, I believe that there was no one there as far as she was concerned. And I just put it down to, I didn't know what it is. Well, it just didn't make sense. So I just dismissed it. And this is before I looked into any of this kind of spiritual path that I've gone down since. I was just living a very sort of day-to-day normal life, paying the bills, this and that. Then the next day I got the call that she'd passed. So this whole event took on a different meaning for me. I thought, okay, well, maybe that was somebody that was letting me know. And I kind of ignored it, right? And it made me look back on these other experiences that I've had over my whole life. Every now and again, something would come up. And again, just these odd, esoteric, fleeting events that I wouldn't know what to do with. I'd be like, okay, well, that's great. That was kind of cool, but well, not the last one. But where does that fit into my day-to-day life, and it kind of made me look at all that, and then I went down a very deep rabbit hole of exploring spirituality, and yeah, essentially that's where the book started.
Well, it's a beautiful impetus, although I'm sure it's a confusing impetus for you, right?
Well, it was an odd one. I was trying to think, do I find comfort in that? I mean, who was this person? He didn't look like a family member. If we're obviously talking ghosts here, or spirit guides, or what have you, I didn't recognize him, so it wasn't comforting in that sense. But it's turned my life around completely and opened me up to this whole world of spirit, which is something I didn't see coming.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, one of the things that we have in common, and I think a lot of your readers probably relate to, maybe not everyone talks about it, but I believe in our younger ages that we are most open, most susceptible, most more easily connected to the spirit world because we don't have any filters and judgment about that. And so, myself, as well as you, that you mentioned in your book, yeah, I had early visions, sightings, knowings, conversations um, that scared me at first, as they often do, many of
Yeah,
us, at a
yeah,
certain point. When we're young, depending on what the vision or the experience was, I think it can be comforting or interesting. And then when we start to analyze it and get into our rational mind about it, it becomes terrifying at some points. Also, what we have in common is when you described what I would call like a download. I think you were on the beach, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but when you heard a clear message about your purpose and what you were supposed to do, or maybe it was from your friend Tom in one of the readings.
yeah.
Um,
There's a few there. There's a few around that. Yeah,
yeah,
but
and
yeah, the download.
yeah, I too, I've had a lot of information come in, obviously, because I do mediumship and I do intuitive readings and so forth. But I remember distinctively one night I went to meditation in Manhattan, and it was just one of those nights. I teach meditation all the time, and I was hungry to be fed. I was hungry to be, receiving. And so I went to this meditation, and it was a popular meditation center, and eager to learn from someone else how they lead their meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and sat on the cushion, and that night there was no teacher. And so I had the choice, I could stay or go while I was there. So I decided to stay, and I set up my space, set up the cushion. And for whatever reason, I did have my purse nearby me, because that's how I was able to get my phone out and literally transcribe what I heard. But about 5 minutes into the meditation, I heard a very distinct voice that was not my own. And this was right before my first book, actually. And it said, you are a spirit guide, and you're here to, it was about two paragraphs of crystal clear, basically just telling me my
Mm-hmm.
purpose and calling. I was already on the path, before that, but
Yeah,
that information was startling, and it was beautiful, but it was startling
yeah.
and so clear. It's like, how could it be anything else? And you had a couple of similar experiences like that.
Yeah, yeah. So prior to my mum passing, I had a couple of experiences. Yeah, I don't know which one to start with. So just in line with yours, I woke up one morning just out of the blue. At the time, I was running bars and nightclubs and leading quite a hedonistic, I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, sort of lifestyle. I wasn't really concentrating on anything else but myself and having fun, or what I perceived as fun. Um, I woke up one morning, and the best way I could describe it at the time was as though there was this rainbow stream of consciousness going into the top of my head. I know how that sounds. Um, and to me, that I was like, okay, what's going on? And I was kind of in that state of waking up. I was aware of my surroundings, but I was somewhat still sleeping. I believe they call it the theta state, right? When you go into meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
all these things I've learned about since. And something was asking me, as if I'd made an agreement already, do you still want this? Here you are. And it was almost as though I'd caught something in the act, like midway. And I just was like, what the heck's going on? And it kind of freaked me out. And I opened my eyes, and there was a holographic grid all around me. I know this. I'm glad we started on a sort of, more basic level than this one. All around me, that I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And I just watched it disperse. I thought, okay, well, what was that? And then everything was back to normal. And I remember calling my friend about it. And he was like, well, maybe you slept on your arm funny or something like that, and you were seeing traces. I was like, no, it wasn't that. It was this clear download of information, but I don't know what that information was. But at the time, I knew a lot. I spoke to my fiance about it. She was like, okay, nah, she doesn't believe in anything like that. And I wasn't really, again, this was a year or so before my mum passed. I was like, okay, well, that was odd, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I looked it up, and apparently it's quite a common thing. And you're now another person that's just sort of confirmed this. A couple of people have reached out to me since reading the book, saying that they had the same experience or similar experience, and that it helped clarify for them what happened. Yeah, so that was one of a few.
Yeah. I think what's important, and I've already said, it can be scary, it can be terrifying, it can be confusing. The truth is that you can feel crazy when you're going through upgrades. Let's just call them that. Upgrades,
Yeah.
downloads, awakening, even a profound shift of consciousness can make a person destabilized. And for me, this is why, I teach a lot of emotional healing work as well as mindfulness and so forth, because if we don't have the tools to come back to our center, to find our anchor within ourselves, to find our anchor spiritually, to find our anchor in the earth, then it can be very easy to feel crazy. And I believe you had the experience of feeling crazy.
Another one, yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
but it's interesting because you look back at this thousands of years ago, something called the shamanic sickness, as I think it's loosely termed, and this was something that people would be revered, that somebody would go through this, and that would be the person that people would go to for spiritual advice once they've been through it and come back again. But I went to a doctor with another experience that was very similar, which they diagnosed as psychosis, which terrified me. And they were giving me meds, and meds did nothing at all. Just like this anti-anxiety meds just didn't touch whatever it was that was going on. And eventually I found a guy that was like, oh, no, you're having an awakening, and he gave me a couple of meditations, kind of brought me back to where I wanted to be within a matter of weeks. And I felt completely altered from it. And again, that was some years ago, and then sort of habitual thinking life sort of carried on, and I, just put it behind me. But yeah, all these things since have come back again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think again, your story in your book and just the authenticity that you share your story with about the partying and the living this sort of life, and also having these mystical experiences or these out of body experiences and so forth, not too different than a lot of people. I think there's millions of people, I believe, that if they were a little more aware or tuned in to their intuition or to just their state of being and what they're actually experiencing, they too would probably have similar stories. But most people are so disconnected from themselves, they're disconnected from the energy of who they are and the energy in their environment, that they just kind of keep rolling through things. And even if there's interest in spirituality, there's not a lot of support or propensity to dive further in unless you're a true seeker, and then we get the rap of the woo-woo people or the people outside the box. My belief is that inclination of our spiritual connection is our strongest, it is our strongest self. It is the strength of who we are, and it is our first sense. It is not our sixth sense. It is our first sense. And
Absolutely.
we've blocked it in so many ways that it's hard to dismantle all the pieces in front of us, keeping us from the connection to that sixth sense. So,
Yeah, definitely. And everyone has it, right?
yes.
And I say this a lot, and if anyone's read the book or seen me elsewhere, I kind of repeat this a lot, but a lot of people will agree that you can walk into a room and cut the air with a knife where someone's had an argument, or you get a gut feeling about something that that this thing is absolutely for you, or this job or this relationship or whatever it is. And everyone's, yeah, that's the thing. But as soon as you talk about it as any of the clairsensors, which I can't reel off right now, but any of that stuff, then people just look at you like you're nuts. But it's I agree that it's our first go-to,
Yeah.
and then the thoughts come in, and you weigh everything up and think about it logically, and probably dismiss it.
Right. So the trick for me, and when I'm teaching this, and I'll just mention it because I think it is our first sense. And then we have the challenge of the ego and the mind, which
Mm,
obviously we need because we're human beings here. So we have to integrate the first sense and not bypass the ego and mind, but to integrate it so that it makes sense, so that we can trust it and then ground that information. I think a lot of people, especially if you're going through an awakening or what I call a spiritual emergency or a spiritual crisis, it's
mm,
very easy to get in our head, especially when we are afraid or we feel uprooted or we don't have support around us to make sense of what's happening. Then we kind of lift up out of the physical body and we don't remain grounded, and then therefore we don't have the safe solid energy of the earth for our human self to to tether it to. And so for me that's the most important key when I'm doing readings every time, even today. And when I first started channeling and doing readings and meditating and healing work, it was a disaster because, like you, I had another thing we had in common. I was probably 23 years old, I guess, but I remember it. um, I had come home and I was actively participating in channeling and awakening and opening and aligning my chakras and so forth in the healing work. But they did not help us or talk to us or teach us very much about how to stay grounded, how to stay kind of in our space and protected. And I had all kinds of things, negative things coming into my life. Um, I won't go into them because I've said one or two in another podcast, but I remember one time my dog also looking at me at the top of the stairs, same thing. And he
mm,
actually was barking and I got scared of him, but he was looking around me and he was scared. And it was like I had entities attached to me or something, you know?
mm,
And I just had this barrage of incidents that were not positive, to the point where I had to reach out to someone. I was like, what is going on? Something's not right. And she, a shaman herself, was very helpful in teaching me of how to clear, cleanse, stay safe, grounded, protected. And since that point, I have to go through a ritual every time before I enter into the intentionality of that realm.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
there's a difference between being intentional about it and just kind of going, oh, well, let's just see what's out there, because there's a lot of
yeah.
stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah, I loved everything you just said. I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to take notes on this. It was
Yeah,
really cool. Forgive me if you can hear a cat walking around complaining. It's yeah, I
it's
don't
okay.
know.
We can't. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's fascinating. I haven't actually experienced anything negative so far, and I know there are different schools of thoughts on it. There are some people that open up to these kind of things and don't experience anything in a negative way, but there are some mediums that I spoke to that okay, no, that's the thing, you need to be careful of that. So I haven't actually been through anything like that myself. I feel like I've picked up on things. I worked in a cinema at some point for a couple of months, and there was something in one of the theaters that every time I went in there I was like, no, I don't
Mm.
know what it is, but and other people mentioned it as well that weren't sort of thinking like that. So yeah, I guess there's something to it, but yeah, absolutely everything what you said, sort of going in with intention, and not just sort of being open to inviting everything in and seeing what happens. But yeah, for me, so far so good. Just I'll set the intention, open up with a meditation, and only invite in positive things.
Yes. Well, that's a great way to do it and great way to start. And I want to be clear that even though I moved into this house and it was very spirited. It was there was one really negative energy here. And I'm a firm believer also in the human dimension as well as the spiritual dimension, that
Yeah,
we have the power to control and protect and stay clear and balanced and healthy.
yeah,
I don't prescribe to the philosophy or the what a lot of, I'll call them witches for lack of a better word, um, with the black magic, or with these people are going to hurt you, or they have the power over you, or they have a spell on you, or something like that. I don't
mm,
subscribe to that because I
mm,
think it's just a total projection of our energy outside of ourselves, which decreases our strength and power within ourselves.
Yeah.
But I do believe that when we are willy-nilly about energy, about spirit, about form, about whatever, that we can, and there is lower vibrational frequencies, troubled energy and souls around and so forth. And it can
Yeah.
show up in a variety of ways. It can show up, like for me, it was a dead bird on my front porch, and it was a stalker, and it was, the dog barking and scared of me.
Mhm.
So, so I think anyone that's interested in purposefully pursuing these arts needs to just be aware, and simple things you can do to protect yourself, even if
Yeah.
it's just, creating that safe space around you,
Yeah.
closing your portal, cleansing salt water, that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of different things.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. Just especially when you brought up the witches aspect of it. I've wrote a second book since this one, but that's a whole other conversation. And I looked into excuse me, ancient beliefs and the whole area around witchcraft, and I pretty much paraphrase what you said there, that if somebody were to curse someone, I think it's not really a curse. It's just that you're just giving it life by believing whatever that person said, and then it's playing on your mind and you're repeating it and affirming it. So setting the intention and manifesting what you concentrate on, right? So if somebody puts some hex on you and you're just thinking about that all day long, then it's probably going to manifest in negative ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so, there's so much power. We have so much power, and people don't realize how much power they have.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
So it sounds like you're interested in the mediumship aspect of your work. Is that where you're headed for yourself?
It seems to be. I think I'm not the first to have this story. I walked into a spiritualist church. We have a lot of those here, everywhere. I didn't know they were a thing until the last 2 years. I've walked past one daily for like 3 months or something, and then after my mum passed, I took notice of it. So they're a place where a demonstrating medium will show up once a week, and you can just walk in, no money exchanges hands or anything like that, and they'll give a demonstration of mediumship and work their way around the people there. And the first time I went into one of these, hoping to get a message from my mum, at someone's suggestion, by the way, I wasn't convinced by it at the time. Still, I was when I left. But immediately she started talking about me becoming a medium and being a voice for spirit, as she put it. And it's kind of funny that then the book came about, and I don't know if, yeah, I suppose a skeptic could argue that it came about because the seed had been planted, or if it was destined, or what have you. But yeah, she talked about me being a medium, and it's not something that I don't see myself doing platform mediumship, standing up and giving readings for people. I feel a long way from that still. It's a strange one because I feel like I'm very much at the start of my journey. And I kind of almost apologize for it a lot because I don't know that much. I know what I know, and I can only give my own experience, right? But I was talking with another medium the other day, and that's been doing it for 20 years. And she kind of pointed out that she said, well, your experience isn't limited to just you. You're putting this word out there, and then that's going to blend with other people's experiences and sort of create the greater truth in this, if you want to call it a movement or whatever you could call it, which made me feel a lot better about it. But yeah, I'm very much at the start of my journey. I go to a circle and we practice, and along with seeing amazing things from other mediums and some of the messages that I've had, doing it myself and giving people a confirmation on something that I had no idea that didn't come from me. It definitely didn't. And how does it work? I'm still learning, but yeah, it's a very interesting journey. And I mean, so far, this sounds a bit arrogant, but I've had in the very limited readings that I can do, it's normally a couple of affirmations, excuse me, and then I'm done. I know I'm done at this stage, but it's been, yeah, 100% success rate so far. And I'm talking 10, 20 people. I'm not,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that it won't continue like that.
That's awesome. It doesn't matter how many, I think, if you want to hear any words of encouragement for myself, I think maybe stop asking the question how or why. And
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how many people you've read for, it doesn't matter how it works, it doesn't matter. And that's why I tell my clients that ask me as well, like, how do you do that? I can try to explain it to them, but it's a very personal
Mm.
experience. And at the end of the day, what does it matter?
Well, yeah,
What
that's
does it
it.
matter if I'm ESPing, if I'm, psychic sensing, if I'm talking directly to your grandfather or whatever? Like, what does it matter
Mm, mm,
if you're getting what you need out of it? I'm not here to manipulate. I'm not here to do any danger or harm. I'm only here to
mm.
support, that person's journey in life.
Yeah, and that's, and again, I feel that we're very much on the same page here. When I've been learning about this, there's a very traditional way of doing things over here with this big spiritualist. Well, it's classed as a religion here, spiritualism at this point. And it comes from the Victorian era of people really jumping on this back in the day. So there was a kind of a strict way that some mediums are taught, and then there are others that sort of find it themselves, I suppose, like I have. And I feel very conscious of not upsetting these traditional, spiritualists, where with me just stepping in saying, "Hey, anyone can do this. Here, I've wrote a book about it."
Right.
So I'm kind of wary of that. But again, at the same time, yeah, what does it matter? I'm not that concerned. Is it clairaudience? Is it claircognizance? Is it this or that? As long as I'm getting a message from somewhere and I can hand it over to someone else. As long as I'm not reckless with it, I
Yeah.
suppose. And yeah, and at the end of the day, it's not me, right? It's something coming through me. So it's nothing to do with me. It's not. I'm just the medium, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
It has to get the ego out of the way.
Yeah, there's a spiritualist center here that's very well known in upstate New York
Oh
called Lilydale, and I've taught
yeah.
there every year for the past 4 years, probably.
Okay. I'd
And they
love to
have
go.
I'm sorry.
I'd love to go there. I've heard a lot about it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a really unique place, and they have a sister branch in Florida. I've never been to that one. I think it's smaller. I don't think it's as big of a community. Um, but I'm sharing that to say, like, I think the first time I taught there, I felt a little of that intimidation as well because I didn't go through their teachers and their way and their program and so forth. And I've worked with a lot of people receiving mediumship and then doing it. I got hung up there for a minute of like, am I an evidential medium? What kind of medium am I? How, am I
Yeah.
doing it the correct way? And I just don't even let my attention go there anymore because,
Mm-hmm.
and I also don't claim to know everything. I try to get specific enough information to confirm for the people that I'm reading for that this is, in fact, who we're talking about. This is the event or what we're talking about. And for me, and how I use it in my work is how can we apply that to your healing process now? It's not just information like, oh, your grandfather's here and he's saying hi. I mean, sometimes they do that, but more so I try to link it to events or cognitive memory or wounded spaces within one's mind that's attached to this person, or if there's counsel coming in about that scenario to help alleviate and make more space and love and growth for their mind, for their heart, for their purpose forward. I remember one greeting I got from someone. It was so specific. My grandfather comes through a lot. And it's surprising because he would
I think I've heard.
never talk about this in real time, like never. But he comes through a lot. We had a full on business conversation. Like
Mm,
literally, he was coaching me through the next steps. And I mean details of the next steps with the business, that I didn't go in looking for that. He brought it up because that's where I was in my life. And
yeah, yeah.
because of that conversation, I didn't do the thing I was thinking about doing because his rationale behind it was so strong. I was like, oh, that's not the direction I'm meant to go right now. I'm going to go do it this way.
Mm,
And
mm,
it saved my business, it saved my
right.
business, literally.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So there's so much help. And I think when we're coming from that standpoint of what are we really doing here? It's not about what you or I are doing. It's not about what any medium's doing. It's not even about really what spirit is, pushing through. It's really about the connection of knowledge and knowingness that is available at all times and the support that we have at all times so
yeah.
that we can live our higher vibrational life, a life that we love, the life that we're here to live on purpose. And
Mm, mm.
that's what I love about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I love what you're saying about these things. I really do.
Mm,
Yeah, and it's for me that again the catalyst was my mum passing. I suppose even as we get older, we kind of hopefully turn into better people. And I feel that sometimes it takes an event like that, or personal illness or something, to just kind of bring you around to, like, okay, actually, it's not, this whole thing isn't about me. Like, even before the mediumship,
Right.
it's hopefully for the greater good. And I think a lot of people unfortunately miss that, but
We do.
yeah, we're all here and at different stages of the journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like I'm starting over almost. Not that
Yeah.
I didn't do anything horrific or anything before, but I just wasn't open to the greater good, if it were.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Are you in a relationship with your mother now in a different way?
Yeah, definitely. That's the first time someone's asked me that, and something that I've been thinking of, funnily enough, the last couple of days. But yeah, this is how these things seem to work out, right? Yeah, I believe that, I suppose even a skeptic could agree that the relationship goes on, even if they think it's one-sided. You've still got stuff to deal with, and you can project that to wherever you're projecting it. But yeah, I definitely believe that we're still in communication, and she's around from time to time.
Mhm.
I still think of her a lot. It's only been 2 years, but there's a difference between thinking about her a lot and then feeling that, okay, she's around for some reason right now.
Mm.
And then she's come through with different mediums that I've trained with and stuff like that. So yeah, it's helped, for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wish she was still here physically, but yeah, I feel it's an evolved relationship now. The petty stuff's out the way. It's just more about love. Of course, we would get our parents drive us nuts sometimes, right? And I'm sure I drove her nuts. So yeah, now all that stuff's out the way. It feels like a purer relationship.
That's beautiful. Well, I hope it continues to grow. I love relationships with people on the other side. It is pure, it is deep. There's so
Mhm.
much available there, I believe. And yeah, I just think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can experience when but we have to work on that relationship, just like we work on relationships in this form or dimension. It is a relationship, the same way that well, I believe that we should work on relationships with God or with our angels or with our guides. It's not just okay, I'm here now and I'm listening, tell me what you want me to do, right?
Mhm.
It's I love you, I'm grateful, what you are to me. It's the same kind of poetry and love language that we have with people that we love here.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for us to forget to build that relationship.
Yeah, that I really beautifully said. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, this is all a learning process for me. And it's yeah, it's just been life changing, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
think you're one to attest to this as well, that just the simplicity, I will say, yes, channeling, trusting your intuition, mediumship, there is a challenge to it. Most of the challenge is internal, but it's
Mm,
not, it's not easy in a certain regard until we allow it to become easy. But even the participation in life and looking for signs and seeking direction and guidance, and myself, I forget to do this sometimes, but it can
mm.
be as simple as asking,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Asking.
And getting out of our own way, that's one thing that I can see, even in the last 2 years of actively pursuing this. I can see moments where I'll get caught up in this or that needs to be taken care of, a bill needs to be paid, or work needs to be done and stuff like that. And that spiritual side will take a back seat until I open up and bring myself around to it again, and think of the bigger picture. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely getting out of my own way is something that I need to learn more about, or to concentrate more on, I should say, because yeah, I definitely see a difference
Yeah.
when we.
Yeah. And I mean, some people, get, I think, sometimes too caught up on, I'm looking for the signs and I saw the numbers again and I saw this. I said, so it
Yeah.
can get easy to go, I don't want to say too far, but we have to make sure that we're not doing some magical thinking, but that
Mm,
and this is why, again, I say that word relationship. It's an engagement with the present moment, with what is around us, and what are we sensing, and what are we feeling drawn to, and what are we feeling called to do? Or, there's so many different senses going off all the time. And if we can
Yeah.
stay
It's,
aware to those, right?
That's it. And we're just constantly being distracted. And what you talk about signs as well, again, I don't feel that every single white feather that I see is my mum checking in, it's probably a seagull or something. I don't know. But then sometimes when you need it, it can be comforting, whatever way you look at it. But yeah, as for being distracted, it's nonstop, isn't it? And obviously we're not the first people to talk about this, but yeah, being able to connect with the moment of now, because that's essentially all we've got. And this is can go into a completely different stratosphere with this kind of talk, but all we've got is now. Everything else is just a memory of the past or an idea of the future. There's only now all the time. And it can be quite overwhelming when you kind of really tap into it, but quite beautiful as well. And I think through meditation, obviously I don't need to tell you about it, that's really the space to be, right? Sort of dancing between the thoughts, being aware that they're there but not attaching anything to them, and just trying to stay in the moment. And then I think obviously that's where you can tell when something comes in that's not you, spirit guides or however you want to look at it.
Right. Start
With the
differentiate.
voices. Yeah, when you begin to recognize those are your thoughts marching on in the background there, you're here somewhere in the middle of it, and trying to stay sort of open and clear. And then all of a sudden something else comes in, then you start to recognize that's definitely not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of meditation, so you have quite a few very lovely meditations in your book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're very lovely. And so I'm assuming meditation is a regular part of your life.
Yeah, it's something that I need to actively make sure I do. Again, recently I feel I've just moved into a new apartment in the last few months, and I've still got so much of my mum's stuff boxed up that I'll open it, I'll look at it, no, can't do that yet, and all that kind of thing. So the place is in disarray, and that's kind of practical things have got in the way. But yeah, I need to make more time for it. I try to meditate daily, even if only for 10 minutes, even if only for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
if that's managed. If I've got more time, then great. But yeah, there's absolutely a benefit to it. I think some years ago I used to get anxious about stuff, and that's all completely gone since I've started meditating.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's nothing but beneficial, and again, just connecting with now, and sort of it stops you sweating the small stuff. I think it gets you in tune with where you are in the world, your place in the world, and everything else is just again a distraction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I hear you. I mean, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and that I need to do this or I should do that. I
Yeah.
think just the awareness of it. And if it is a few minutes, it doesn't matter to me if it's 1 minute, if it's one breath, if it's 5 minutes, if it's 50
Mm.
minutes, who cares? The point is that, I'm becoming aware of the moment, of the inner world. And when I can, and when I am able to go into a deeper space and this beautiful meditation experiences, they're profound, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I'm just sitting there struggling through it going, what the hell is this? I just want to get up and go have dinner, you know?
Yeah.
So I try to really fold in meditative experiences throughout my day, whether it's painting or even like walking. I mean, there's a thing, walking meditation, but for me, just slowing down, because I have a tendency to go fast, just
Mm,
slowing down on a walk and getting in my body a little more fully, and
mm,
taking some breaths and just walking for a few minutes that way. It's a reset, and I'm in the same kind of space as I would be if I was sitting on my cushion
yeah.
and
Yeah.
doing that. So
Do you feel that you've always been like that? I feel that the way you're talking there is something that I recognize throughout my life, but I didn't really know what it was, or that it was any different to how anyone else was going about their day or something like that. I feel like I've always had that ability to just sort of tune into this moment and sort of take a breath and realize that this is more important than all of that.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's, I suppose it can be learned, but I'm not sure if everybody has it. If we get it in fleeting moments of maybe sitting on a beach or staring up at the stars or something like that.
Right. Well, what I can say confidently about you is I think you're a highly sensitive person, and
Mm,
um and I think people who are sensitive by nature, not always, but I think there is more of an attunement to and maybe perhaps a natural inclination or ability to perceive the moment as more than what maybe a not so sensitive person would be able to, and some of that I think is strictly comes from psychologically survival mode. We've had to feel safe, to be here now, to make sure everything's set okay. And and so in that space, yes, I do think that can be a very meditative space if we're not in a heightened state of protection or holding or defensiveness or what have you.
There's a lot in that. I think what you just said there as well. There's a lot to think about. Just if you don't mind me asking, when did you begin to get into mediumship? Was it always something was it through that experience of meditating, or was that your first kind of connection with spirit guides? Obviously, how did that lead you into mediumship?
I had some visions when I was very young. The ones that I told you scared me. It was a black energy came into my bedroom and sat on the bed with me and terrified me through the night. Like I was laying there, couldn't breathe under the covers. And when I woke up, when the sun started to rise, I know this sounds so like a Disney movie or something, but I saw a dove on my dresser. And I was scared of that for about 16, 20 years, growing up. And then I had the realization that presence was there for me as a protector, as a comforter, and I believe as one of my guides. I saw it coming down the hallway and into my room and on the bed. So I had some visions like that. I also had some visions of ghost characters in the Bahamas when I was traveling there. It was a group of children in the corner singing, in the middle of the night. So I saw those. I've seen several times different experiences like that. But after my rape and my traumas that I went through and a lot of things in my childhood, I went to a school for enlightenment and healing in California on purpose for my own healing. And I didn't expect there to learn much about mediumship or channeling or intuitive processes. I thought I was going mostly just for meditation and energy work. But we would just start learning. We would just sit and channel for a partner. And it was very uncomfortable. It was very intimidating. I was young. I didn't know what was going on. And I was hearing and seeing things. So that was probably the first time that I kind of agreed to it and said yes to it. But then I turned it off because I felt like it was intrusive to me, and I feel like I was being intrusive to other people. And so, then I kind of did other work in the holistic healing world, including energy work. But even when I was doing that, I was able to see, like I would work on a person. I was a massage therapist for a few years. And when I put my hands on a person, I could see inside their body. It was really bizarre, and help them see what issues were going on. And then it just kind of continued developing until I felt comfortable enough to trust. I always trusted what I saw in the body, and I trusted the visions that I saw. But to have intimate conversations with someone about specific people, that really probably just in the last 10 years have I been offering that and doing that. If a person requests that in session. So, and when I do it, I don't know what it is like for you, but often I will see the person and the location of where they are kind of around them, at their crown or on the right side, their left side, various positions around them or on their side body or what have you. And again, that kind of comes through like specific incidents or memories, sometimes items, colors. I see visually like what they looked like, and able to connect that way. And I do find it to be very helpful and healing for people. To have it.
I the way that I've experienced it so far, and it's only been practicing. I haven't sat with anybody that's come to me for a reading. It's always been we'll do one each, and it's typically somebody that I haven't met before in a workshop situation or the circle that I go to. I'll see the person at least, and this is not that many times, but I'll see the person in the environment that I believe they were. I seem to get a lot of care homes, and I'll describe the person. I'll see them clear as day, and the environment that I believe that they were in before they passed. And then at that point, I'll ask for a message, and those will come through as a symbol of some sort, like an airplane or a garden or something like that. And that's pretty much me done. And I don't know if that's me getting in the way at that point, starting to tell myself, okay, that's me done. Maybe I need to be more open to more coming through. But yeah, interesting to hear that that's how you perceive it. And one interesting thing is that afterwards it kind of goes. I can't tell you how that person looked afterwards. I know what I said, but they don't sit in the memory in the same way that regular stuff does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because it is a personal, it's like a craft, and it's a personal,
Mm-hmm.
like if you were painting a picture and I was painting a picture, we could be painting the same picture, but it's going to come out looking completely differently. And I think the same happens
Yeah.
when we're channeling that way. So
This is actually the first time that I've actually spoke to somebody purely about mediumship through this podcast format. Quite interestingly, I've done a couple recently, and I'll notice that when I talk to a male, they'll be more interested in the spooky stuff, like, oh, what happened? Like, do you have any stories or any, and then I'll speaking of women, it's much more about the healing and the talking about grief and all that kind of stuff, which I prefer, to be honest with you. I don't really have any sensational ghost stories or anything. So yeah, I feel that this is what it's about, and it's nice to be able to openly talk about mediumship, because I think some people are probably still on the fence about it.
Yeah, they are. People are until they are affected or want the help that way, right?
Yeah. So my fiance, she doesn't buy into any of this stuff, right? And we've had a couple of experiences together, which has been a bit diplomatic about, since she knows that I'm 100% invested in this and just wrote a book about it. But I took her the other night to see a medium called Gordon Smith. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, I have actually. Yes.
Yeah, in the UK, I think he's considered the best. Kind of like the James Van Praagh sort of got the attention over here. We went to a place called the Arthur Findlay College, which is a development school. And we watched him work for 45 minutes. He was giving street names, last names, first names, describing people perfectly. And afterwards I said to her, so what, you've got to be convinced now, right? And she was like, I don't know, yeah, it's a bit weird. I'm like, well, of course it's weird. He's talking to dead people, right? But she's still not convinced. So yeah, but anyway, it's nice to openly talk about mediumship. So I don't really, other than my development circles, don't really have it.
Yeah. Well, that must be an interesting relationship between the two of you.
Yeah. I mean, she's been very supportive, and I'm just kind of amazed that we definitely have experienced things together.
Well, speaking of these kinds of experiences, you'll be glad to know that the house that you were remarking on that I'm living in now was full of energy and spirits when I got here. One malevolent one, and I've had to spend a lot of my energy clearing and working, so much so that I've been writing a film. And yes, so this podcast, I believe, is going to transform in the coming days to speak more about the experience here, the direct experience of what it is like in the paranormal state and how to stay with it and work with it and so forth, and just the experience here. So
we'll definitely be listening. Yeah, no, interesting. Yeah, when I moved into this place, I immediately woke up. This always seems to come when I wake up in the morning, again in that state that I was talking about before. I just got a sense of a lady being here before me, somehow involved with the theater, like a performer of some sort. And I kind of got this 80s vibe about her. In fact, I saw her. She had like an 80s kind of haircut. And at the time, so I've been working as an actor sporadically, and every now and again you need to get a day job. So I actually saw an ad for the local theater, and this isn't going to end up very sensational, but I didn't see a photo of her there or anything like that. But funnily enough, just one morning, somebody told me to wake up, and I heard a female voice that wake up. I believe it was her, and I would have slept in, and I wouldn't have gone for the job interview, and I did have a great time working there. Yeah, but I think she was something to do with that. Haven't heard from her since. I'm not sure if that was all she had to say, but yeah, I
Yeah.
believe that she was here.
Yeah, that's cool. I love those stories and experiences. Well, Phill, thank you so much for being on the show. And for
Thanks for
those
having me.
listening, Phil's book is Letting Glow, and you can find it on Amazon. He's in the UK, and his website and all of his information will be in our show notes. So please check those out. Share this episode with a friend if you know someone who's maybe curious or going through their own time period of awakening or just understanding, shifting their perception even. Um, tune them in. We're here for them and here for you always. And I will look forward to seeing you all next week on the Modern Sage podcast.